In this video, I am going to be looking at a variety of horror trailers and looking into the genre of horror itself and some of the typical conventions used. Horror as a genre is something that we expect to make us feel scared, and we usually expect to see people being violently hurt or being killed. Through research into the horror genre, I found that they are typically meant to play on the audience's primal fears and seek a negative emotional reaction from those. They often deal with viewers' nightmares and fears. Plots within the horror genre often involve the intrusion of an evil force, event, or person, commonly of a supernatural origin, into the everyday world. There are many subgenres of horror. Action horror combines the intrusion of an evil force, event, or supernatural personage of horror movies with gunfights and forensic chases of the action genre. Themes or elements often seen in action horror films include gore, demons, vicious animals, vampires, and most commonly zombies. This category also fuses the fantasy genre. Comedy horror simply combines both comedy and horror together. Body horror is the graphic destruction of the body, including unnatural movements and the anatomically incorrect placement of limbs to create monsters out of human body parts. Psychological horror relies on characters' fears, guilt, beliefs, eerie sound effects, relevant music, emotional instability, supernatural, and ghosts to build up tension. Science fiction horror often revolves around subjects that include, but are not, killer aliens, mad scientists, and experiments that have gone wrong. Splatter films deliberately focus on graphic portrayals of gore and graphic violence through the use of special effects and excessive blood and guts. They overt interest in the vulnerability of the human body. Gothic horror is a type of story that contains elements of goth and horror. At times it may have romance that unfolds in the setting of a horror tale, usually suspenseful. Some of the earliest horror movies were of this subgenre. Natural horror is a subgenre of horror films featuring nature running amok, which are normally harmless animals or plants turned into cold-blooded killers. Zombie films feature creatures who are usually portrayed as either reanimated corpses or mindless human beings. In this video, I am going to be looking at 4 aspects of horror trailers: typical characters, typical settings, storylines, and soundtracks. The first trailer I am going to look at is of a film called Would You Rather, which is an American horror film. Iris and 7 other desperate people become trapped in Shepard's mansion. Shepard forces them to play a sadistic game for a large sum of money, but the dilemmas become increasingly deadly. Iris needs the money in order to look after her brother who has cancer and for his treatment. They are forced to do horrific acts, and it is the last person to be alive who wins the money. For example, being forced to slit your eye with a razor blade and holding your head underwater for 4 minutes. Iris is the only one to survive, so she wins the money. She goes home to find her brother, who has cancer, has killed himself. We can see from this film that there certainly is not a happy ending. Iris goes through complete trauma to win the money for her brother to find he's killed himself when she gets home. We feel sympathy towards Iris because we can see that she would do anything for her ill brother, and we can see she's very upset about what she's been through. Then when she comes home and finds her brother dead, we feel very sorry for her. When watching the film, I personally found it very gory and traumatising. This is also a popular convention of horror films, making the audience feel this way. The traumatic acts which the participants were forced to take part in were very disturbing for the audience. The main character is Iris, who is taking part in the Would You Rather game, and she wins the game. This is something commonly seen in horror films where the main character goes through a series of events and is often the only one to survive. Therefore, they can be seen as the audience as strong and powerful. Then we have Shepard Lambrick, who is the host of the dinner party, who forces the contestants to do the allocated acts. This is the kind of person we often see in horror films who is seen as the sick-minded and evil character. This kind of character is most often a man, as they are stereotypically more powerful and aggressive. He is very intimidating and sarcastic, which makes the audience feel on edge as to what he is going to do. As you can see from the video, he has a sense of power in the way that he talks to the contestants. The other contestants are extremely confused and vulnerable in this situation, which makes the audience concerned for them. A large amount of victims is often seen, as it makes it even more traumatising and worrying for the audience. The elderly lady makes the event seem worse because we feel sorry for her as she has a lack of power, and so we greatly sympathise her. It also makes us dislike Shepherd Lambrick even more as he is picking on someone who can't defend themselves. Whereas the teenage girl contestant, the audience begin by disliking her due to her lack of consideration towards the other contestants, even though she's also a victim.
Regarding tonight's game, please allow me to alleviate any concerns you have.
We haven't already been playing.
Oh no, the game is yet to officially begin.
What exactly is the game?
Well, it is not a quiz or a trivia contest, nor is it a test of brute strength or athleticism. At its core, it's just a children's game, and I would wager that some of you here this evening have played Would You Rather at some point. So, how do we play? In each round, each player will be given a choice between A or B. And usually, neither choice is very attractive. Let's see if I can give you an example. Travis, would you rather kiss Iris or Peter?
Guess I kiss Iris.
Very good. Now, this is where our version of the game is different. Whatever you choose, you must act upon. So in this case, Travis, you must walk over and kiss Iris.
You're gonna make us kiss each other?
No, nothing like that, my dear. No, that was just off the top of my head. Now, as the game continues with one dilemma after another, eliminating players as we go until we have a winner.
Iris's house, which we see at the beginning and end of the film, is extremely depressing and dull, which represents how her life is, hence why she needs the money to pay for her brother's treatment and build their lives. In comparison to Shepherd Lambrick's house, we see that he is a lot more wealthy and as a result has a lot more power. The house is decorated and looks as though there has been a lot of money spent on it, again representing how he is superior to Iris and the other contestants. The fact his house is so big makes the audience think it's even harder for the contestants to escape, making them seem even more helpless. Music is not played throughout the film, however it does have a soundtrack which is at the start and the end of the film. The song is very repetitive and unsettling. It has been used to create anticipation. I am now going to look at The Babadook, which is a psychological horror film. The storyline of The Babadook is the widow Amelia lost her husband in a car accident while driving her to hospital to give birth to their son Samuel. She has quit writing books for children and presently works at a nursery home to raise Samuel alone. However, the boy is problematic and outcast by his friends and even by his Aunt Claire and his cousin Ruby. Amelia usually reads books for Samuel before sleeping, and one night he gives the mysterious book Mr. Babadook that he has found in his room. Amelia and Samuel are disturbed by the book that tells the story of a supernatural entity that torments people, and Samuel tells that Babadook is haunting him during the night. Amelia rips up the book and throws it into the garbage, but soon they are haunted by Babadook. Amelia uses pills and Samuel and she are able to sleep during the night. When the book Mr. Babadook appears mended on her front door, weird events happen in the house. We can see that straight from the beginning of the film, there is a disturbing encounters. For example, the fact that she lost her husband on the way to give birth to her son. We also see that the son is an outcast, which is something we would expect to see in a horror film, where there is an outcast character, as we predict from the beginning that they are going to have something to do with what is going to happen, which will be scary. The fact that they are being haunted is also something very typical that we see in horror films. and as it makes the characters look vulnerable, but also it makes the audience feel it. Once Amelia rips the book up, it returns to her doorstep mended. We don't know who has mended it and how it has happened, which makes us confused and worried. This is something we often see in horror films, as it's the unknown which makes us feel scared and is the primary purpose of the genre. In this film, we have Amelia, who is the mother of Samuel. She's a troubled widow. Someone being troubled is something very often seen in horror films, as it makes the audience sympathise them, but also a little creeped out by them, therefore making the audience feel confused and on edge. Someone being troubled also makes the audience aware that this person is possibly in danger, which again makes them feel apprehensive for what is to come. We also have a child in this film which is extremely naughty and is affected by the Babadook, which is seen as creepy to the audience. We also have Robbie, who is a work colleague of Amelia's, who isn't affected by the Babadook, and to the audience almost seems like the only normal character. Then we have Mrs. Roach, who is the elderly lady who lives next door. It is very often in horror films there is some connection with the neighbours surrounding the main house. The audience feel warmed to Mrs. Roach because Amelia and Samuel are quite rude to her, and she seems very innocent. Innocent characters are seen very often in horror films, as it makes the audience sympathise them. In this clip, we see Amelia washing the dishes, which the audience see as a typical mother role, making her seem in control of the house. We then see Mrs. Roach looking comfortable watching TV, making the audience think that Amelia may be quite jealous of how peaceful her life is. We then see that Amelia sees the Babadook, which shows her as troubled and vulnerable. The main setting of the Babadook is in the house which they live. The house is very drab and old-fashioned, which is something we often see in horror films, as it adds to the spooky effect. Houses are used extremely often in horror films because the audience can relate and feel scared because it is likely they are in their own house when watching it. Therefore, it is more effective because it shows the characters aren't safe in their own homes, which makes the audience fear they're the same. We also see Amelia and her son in their car in some scenes. The car is also very old-fashioned, and Amelia always looks very blank and like she isn't concentrating while she's driving, which shows us how she is majorly distracted and that she isn't very safe. The audience sees a scene where Amelia goes to the police station to report being stalked. The police officers in the police station giggle at her, and she appears intimidated and embarrassed. A police station is something we would expect to see in a horror film, as crime is something majorly associated with horror. We also see scenes in the basement of Amelia's house, which could be seen as quite disturbing scenes. Basements are something also often seen in horror films, as they are very isolated and they are easy to become trapped in. A sound effect seen throughout the film is the Babadook noise. This is a scary and creepy noise which makes the audience feel scared and intimidated. This is commonly seen in horror movies where the character or creature seen as scary makes noises which makes the audience feel uncomfortable. The film also has a main theme soundtrack. The track is asynchronous because it doesn't match the theme of the film, which is obviously horror. The music is quite slow and therefore the audience feels confused and uncomfortable. We would expect to have seen something fast-paced and dramatic, making us feel as though the Babadook is going to jump out on us. However,